Rook takes h5, and it always gets marked with a brilliancy. And my opponent just kind of let out a sigh here, like, oh no. And he told me, like, immediately after the game, he said, "You played that game like a master." Hey guys, welcome to the second game from my chess tournament that I played on Monday, which was 2 days ago from the day this video was posted. And I had white in this game, and I can remember this entire game from memory, which I think was pretty cool. Although it's not actually that remarkable since each player has 30 minutes to look at one single chess game. So if you really think about it, it's not that remarkable. I just think it's kind of cool. But anyways, I started with d4. I want to play the Jobava London system, which is the thing that I play nowadays. Like, this is basically the only thing I play because I think it's really fun, and also I'm learning it. And my opponent chose the Dutch defense, which I don't really respect as an opening, if I'm completely honest, because it weakens the game. It's just fundamentally bad. It's not like a terrible opening objectively, but it fundamentally, I think it's flawed, and you'll see why in this game. So this is just simple Jobava setup. I mean, nothing too remarkable yet. You've seen this in my Blitz games. After e6, I actually play a gambit with g4, for example, knight takes, and then e4 after knight takes. And they can't take with f-pawn because then they lose their knight to the queen. Sorry if you can't visualize that, it's fine. Didn't happen in the game, you don't need to worry about it. So after d6, which is just blunting the bishop, stopping knight to b5 maybe, I mean, it seems like just a normal fundamental move. I play just a very, again, normal e3. The computer likes queen 2d2, trying to long castle as soon as possible, but I think this is just good for the Jobava setup for this move order. So I did it this way, and my opponent played g6, and this is just so typical in the Jobava especially, to just play h4. Whenever the opponent plays g6, send the h-pawn, open up the h-file. It's usually a really good plan. And the move I was most worried about here was obviously h6, but my opponent just kind of ignored my entire idea and played bishop to g7. So, I mean, very obviously the best move here is h5. And you'll notice that it loses a pawn. But if you know my style and how the Jobava works, you'll notice that the very, very typical move here is rook takes h5, and it always gets marked with a brilliancy. Stockfish loves the sacrifice. It always gets marked as brilliant, and especially in my games, I don't know. It's kind of cool just get a brilliancy almost every game with the sacrifice. So yeah, I mean, the idea is very obvious here. You're exploiting the very weak king. This is the entire reason why f5 was a bad move in the first place, because now the king can't even castle at all, and it's forced to a very weak square. I don't know why this is called a great move. It's like the only logical move. I saw bishop to c4 here, but I didn't really. I think I was worried about e6, and then what am I really doing? For example, bishop c4, e6. I didn't really see a way forward here. I probably would have continued with the same plan, but I think the plan I went for here is all right. It is the third engine move currently, and I played bishop h6. I don't know why it's marking it accuracy. I still have an advantage. Obviously not a giant advantage. It's only like plus 0.5, but my opponent blundered immediately. And honestly, I was calculating this move, and it took me a minute to even realize queen to e8 is a blunder here when it was my opponent's move. So like when his clock was running, I was calculating moves that he could do to try and stop the attack. And I'm like, okay, what do I do after queen e8? Do I take on g7? But it took me a minute to realize that after queen to e8, it's so obvious that you just take the queen, king takes, and bishop takes g7. You win a piece, which now you just have two pieces for the rook. Yeah, I also have, I just have two pieces for the rook. It's 6 points material for 5, so that is why the material advantage is +1. So obviously the move here is rook to g8, and I saved my bishop by playing bishop to h6, and I thought my opponent played a very tricky move here, which is e5. And the point is if I do nothing, for example, let's say I long castle, it's going to show a blunder, but you have rook to h6, and you can't really save your bishop, but there's tricky moves like knight d5, which is still +3 for me. It doesn't quite do the trick as I would like. So I obviously didn't do that. I'm like, okay, he wants to trap my bishop, so I'm not going to allow it. So I take, and play f4. The idea here is simply to reinforce the g5 square, so my bishop can retreat to that square and not get taken. So my opponent plays e4. He doesn't want to trade pawns, I'm assuming, because he is down material here. And I just play the very obvious move here, which is knight to d5. And the reason this is so obvious, if you didn't see it, for example, is because you're attacking the c7 square, which would be a fork on the rook, which is trapped in the corner, and the king. So it's just a threat even if the king wouldn't be in check. And also you're threatening knight to f6 check, which forks the king and the rook on this square, which is also kind of interesting. So my opponent came up with a creative way to try and stop it, although it doesn't quite work because there's a tactic that just destroys his entire plan. So his plan is rook to g6, and obviously I tried to keep it simple here, so I moved bishop back to g5. And the entire point of my opponent's plan is now revealed with rook to c6. I think obviously rook g7 here is much better, even though it does lose a full rook. But it's still better, I think, especially psychologically, because after rook to c6, I just have bishop b5, and that's pinning the rook to the king. And my opponent just kind of let out a sigh here, like, oh no, what have I done? But I mean, it's just one of those games that you kind of just almost feel bad for your opponent, but also not really. It's a kind of, you kind of feel bad, but you also kind of don't, since it's a competitive game. You want to win. But anyways, he played king to d7, which I didn't think was a great move. What does it really do? It doesn't break the pin. The rook is already defended by the knight and the pawn. You're not really doing anything here. I guess you're maybe defending the c7 pawn, so whatever. But I just played the, I think it was very accurate, long castles. Stockfish agrees with me that it was very accurate. And the idea is after takes, if takes with the pawn, I have knight b6 discovered check, forking the rook and the king. And if king takes, then I have this check, winning a full bishop. You'll see in the game, this is essentially how the game ends. So after king to d6 to try and unpin the rook, obviously I take the rook since it's there. Stockfish comes up with some crazy tactical idea, but I didn't find it. I just tried to keep it simple, which I don't know why Stockfish doesn't agree with that, but apparently knight takes c7 was mate in 6. I didn't see that. I didn't think I needed to calculate too deep in this position, which I think is fair. So after king takes, I just pointed this out earlier. The entire point of my rook being here is to cut off the king from the d file. So I have this nice check on e7, which forks the king and the rook. The king cannot come back to defend the bishop, so I am winning a full bishop. And that is why in this position my opponent did resign. And he told me, like, immediately after the game, he said, "You played that game like a master," which I thought was just really nice of him. Really cool guy, first time playing him. Definitely good sport. I did think he played well. I just think the opening was I think I did put up a quite challenging line against him. But yeah. Anyways, the accuracy, I played 87.5, which is pretty nice for a classical game. Not classical, but it's 30 with 5-second delay. But it counts towards the classical and rapid for USCF. And my opponent had an accuracy of 76.6, also pretty respectable. And for the estimated ratings, I had an estimated rating of 2,000. I think it's a little low, to be honest. I mean, come on. I played that really well. Stockfish being a bit harsh. And my opponent had an estimated rating of 1650. Not bad. But also, this is the first ever time, I'm just going to go to full screen. This is the first ever time I've seen the brilliancy symbol given for the opening. First time ever seeing that. I've never seen the opening ever been giving a brilliancy. My opening accuracy was 99.1, which is pretty nice. But anyways, that does it for today's video. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you tomorrow.